everyone, I'm Anam.
And I'm Ksenia. Welcome to This Wasn't in the Manual.
On this podcast, we talk about lessons no one teaches you about work, identity, creativity, and confidence.
And today's episode is about something that affects all of us, but that so many of us feel unprepared for: money.
We're joined by Patricia, Global Head of Programmatic at Capital.com. Her journey has taken her from agencies in London to Amazon, then across continents to Dubai, where she moved into tech and eventually fintech.
She's not just a leader in the digital space, she's also passionate about making financial independence accessible, especially for big men.
We're talking about the financial habits we inherit and the ones we choose and the ones we have to rewrite. This one's for anyone who ever felt like they missed the money manual.
Let's get into it. Patricia, thank you for coming to our podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here.
Amazing. And I don't know really a lot about you, so let's start from the beginning. I know that you started your career in London, if I'm not mistaken. How did these early years look, and where exactly did you work? When did you move to London, and or were you born there?
Yeah, that's actually, I guess, a good start. Okay, so I am Nigerian and British, and I grew up in Nigeria, but I went to school in the UK, hence the accent. And I remember, like, I don't know about you guys, but going into university and having to pick what you wanted to study at that period of time just felt like the worst thing in the world. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And from a Nigerian background, you've got a couple options. You're either gonna be a doctor,
Engineer.
be an engineer, or be a lawyer. So, and I didn't really want to do any of that. So I just decided to do something that I was good at, and I was good at numbers. So I studied maths, and I think that's probably been one of the worst and best decisions I've made. Because worst, it was terrible. I hated it. But best, because it actually led me into doing what I do now. So straight out of uni, I don't know how, I can't really remember. I think I was on LinkedIn even back then, which is crazy. Who used LinkedIn back then? But I did. And I got approached by a recruitment company, and they were looking for maths grads, engineering grads to basically start working in this tech company. And I thought, okay, this is a scam, but sure, desperate times, I'm going to go for it. So I went to the interview, got there, had no idea what was going on, as would I think most people would in the first ever interview. And I landed a role as an intern in an ad tech company. So I know.
Oh, wow.
Back then, DSP side programmatic had only really just started, and they wanted, I guess, these young grads to basically work with, you know, the algorithms and the linear programming at the period of time and the optimization, which obviously now is very different, but back then was very manual. So yeah, I was in, I guess, like DSP side for about 4 years, then moved over to the agency side where I worked at Omnicom in the UK for about 3.5 years. Learned a lot. Agency side is not for the weak-hearted, which I'm sure you both know. And then from there, I went to SSP side, and I worked at Magnite, leading the UK, the Nordics. And then from there, I moved to Dubai and joined Amazon, and now I'm in fintech. So it's been a bit of a messy journey, I guess, you know, very heavily advertising and ad tech focused. And I realized, obviously being an agency side, that I really love tech, which is why I left to go back. But I didn't necessarily want to just go back to DSP side, hence, you know, going to supply. And then obviously my most recent move now to fintech is still within the tech space. I needed to find a way to get out of advertising as a whole, and just, I guess, expand my horizons and learn more. I felt like I was at a point of, you know, you've been in this ecosystem for 10, 12 years, and you just feel like, am I really learning that much? So yes, I'm now in fintech, still doing advertising, but in fintech.
Very cool. I feel like Patricia is the first person who's told us that she started in advertising straight off the bat, because everyone else just fell into it. I feel like, yeah, your story is kind of like that too, because none of us really were like trained to be here. So,
Yeah.
but you started off with advertising. That's really cool, actually.
I started off in a niche and I've stayed in that niche, and I'm just like strange, but I'm not mad at it.
To be honest, I can really relate to your story because when I started working at agency, my first role was also in programmatic, and it was just the beginning of programmatic landscape, and it was very interesting, and everyone was so passionate about this. But now I'm thinking that someone who is listening to us and they are not in edtech, they might be a little bit lost, like what DSP is, what SSP is, what programmatic is, what are we talking about? So maybe we can spend like 5 minutes to describe what it is like, just in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Basically, I've had to do this description a lot actually in my new role because I mean, who knows what programmatic is? Like people barely know what some, like bidding is. The easiest way to describe it is I like to think about, taking a step back to the evolution of media buying, right? So you had your old school media buying. Well, I can only think about it in the UK. You had your broadcasters, you have your newspapers, and as an agency, you're literally getting on the phone, or even that's a direct client, you're getting on the phone and having to buy TV spots, buy spots in the newspapers. And, as the evolution of how people are consuming media changes from that sort of like linear and physical print moved over to digital, the way that people then started buying that media also then changed, right? Because we know that in digital, you have a lot more reach, you have a lot more scale. So we kind of transitioned from that one-to-one buying into that one-to-many. So programmatic is essentially, it's just a form of buying. And it is a form of buying that relies on different types of technology. So we talked about DSP, which is a demand side, or SSP, supply side. But essentially, they're just buying technologies. As an advertiser or buyer, you shove your campaigns in the DSP side, and as a publisher, you shove your supply in the supply side, and everything kind of happens in the middle. So it's not overly complex, I guess. We work in this sort of biddable cycle of things, but if you really boil it down, it's basically what we've always been doing, just quicker and more efficient.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's very clear.
Yeah, I like that. When I was trying to learn about programmatic, somebody told me, oh, imagine DSP like a mall and SSP like a warehouse. I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I have no idea where this is going. But yeah.
And can you imagine how I was lost? Because like literally it was my first role at advertising agency, so I did nothing.
Oh, first ever in programmatic.
Yes,
oh, okay.
not in programmatic, in advertising at all. So I didn't know anything about advertising, and I didn't know anything about how it used to be before.
Yeah.
That's why when I was checking all these articles about programmatic, and I was like, what's happening? Why are they overcomplicating things so much?
Guys, forget programmatic. I think even media buying as an industry, I had no clue it existed. Like it was a multi-billion at that time. This is like over a decade ago, right? And at that time, I'm like, what is this? I knew advertising. I didn't know that there was an industry just dedicated to media buying. So I think that was really fascinating for me, just discovering that.
Yeah, no, I was still going to say, sorry to interrupt. I was like, it was crazy because I remember when I first started, like the whole industry didn't know what programmatic was. So imagine being in this advertising, media buying space where people don't know what programmatic is and they're still buying one-to-one. They're still going to Sky News or going to Bloomberg or going to Daily Mail, to every single publisher and having to do those negotiations. And then you're here trying to pitch an idea, which is all tech-based. It removes all of, the manual work. And of course, it was just treated with a lot of fear. Like people are scared of evolution and they're scared of anything that is slightly different. So yeah, like even having to speak to media buyers and explain what programmatic is then was, it was interesting.
It was interesting. I like that we were in the period of when it was transitioning. So I suppose we were also involved in like educating the supply side to get them on board to come in the programmatic ecosystem, because even they were like, what are you doing? We don't get it. Like, what are you doing? Because for the longest time, clients thought programmatic was remnant inventory, where that's how it was sold initially. Yeah. And then it evolved into premium inventory. And you're like, Gulf News, bring them on. Like, each time
it's like, I'll take everything.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's so amazing that, especially I like that now you can buy even audio ad for programmatic. It's amazing. But enough about programmatic. So let's get back to your story. And when exactly did you move to Dubai, and what made you move here?
So I've been here for just under 4 years. But to be honest, like although I got a job and moved here, that wasn't the reason of moving. So my sister's been here for about 10 years. She has kids and settled. And obviously I was just doing my own thing in the UK, which is great, until COVID happened. And then you realize that actually, and I didn't have any family in the UK. So take a moment to kind of think about actually what's important to you and where do you want to be spending time. And I remember I came over to Dubai for Christmas and I got stranded. I mean, there's worse places to be stranded, to be honest. I was very happy. But I was stuck here for 6 months because obviously the UK went into lockdown. So I worked remotely from here for 6 months, and you have that sort of transition of Dubai being a place of holiday where you just come for a week and you're having a really great time to actually figuring out what a day-to-day looks like. And I think for me what was really good was just being ingrained in my sisters and my niece and nephew's life, just everyday life, and not just being this person that comes and goes every couple months. So yeah, after that I realized, I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe it's worthwhile me moving here. I wasn't really sold in the Dubai dream, if you would still call it that. So it was very much like a personal decision. And the way I went about it is I at that period of time, for me, it felt like the worst timing to be moving. I was just about to buy a property in the UK, and I had this image in my head of, making this perfect home for myself. I don't know what was going on. And I thought, you know what, I'm only going to consider or even consider moving if the right opportunity comes. And I wasn't really working that hard to find the right opportunity, to be honest. I just thought, okay, if it's meant to be for me, it will be for me. And I was like, I'm only going to apply to roles that tick all the boxes.
Yeah.
I feel like now I'm looking back, I don't think I wanted to move. I think I was just trying to do everything but actually move.
Really?
Yeah. I was being so particular. I was like, oh, it has to be this and it has to be that and it has to be the right, And I think I only applied to 3 roles in the space of a couple months because I was being so nitpicky. And I kind of was enjoying my new place, like my new home that I just bought. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to relax here. And one of them was the Amazon role. Yeah, very strange. And if you know anything about applying for a role at Amazon, it is interesting, right?
It's one of the most challenging places to get into, as any of the big techs are.
Yes, exactly. So at that period of time, I thought, what the hell? So I had this opportunity for a role. I think I applied for something else, and they got in touch with me and they said, hey, by the way, we saw your CV, but we think that, you'd be perfect for this role. And I just thought, oh God, okay, sure, let me give it a go. I think I got halfway through the interview process and gave up because I just thought, I was like, this is long. It's 5 or something interviews later. You have no idea if you're getting closer to getting it, not getting closer. And at that point of time, I was just like, I just want to live my life and have a good time. And then, I know, it sounds crazy. And then I remember, which is really bad, please nobody do this, I was unresponsive to them for about 2.5 or 3 weeks.
Really?
I know.
Damn.
I just didn't respond. And then I don't know what happened. I think it must have been just a really, really crap week in London where the weather was horrific and everything was just rough. And I remember opening my laptop and being like, oh, let me just respond back to them and see if I can schedule in that other interview. And
you're still in the interview process?
I was still in the interview process and I became unresponsive. It was weird. I don't know what I was doing. And so then I thought, you know what, okay, I'll schedule it in. Like, I've started this, I'm halfway through. And they said, I have maybe another 3 or 4 interviews to go. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I am so tired of this, but sure. And I
hope
thought,
that the bad weather in London lasted for another 3 weeks.
Exactly. The weather was terrible. And I thought, what am I doing here? And then, so I got to the end of the process and I just thought, well, that's that. And I had a good job in the UK, don't get me wrong. I wasn't I wasn't unhappy in my role or itching to leave. Like I was in a good position. So there wasn't that fighting for anything. But I was very much like, if it's meant to be, it will be. And then, I got offered the role. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I can swear on this.
You can.
But I remember thinking, shit. I was like, God, now I actually have to make a decision. It was the best and worst thing, right? Because you have all the options in front of you. But I was like, what the hell have I done? You know, like, why have I done this? Because now I have a choice to make. I have a choice of either staying in the UK, doing whatever I was doing, which is the safe choice, or cutting all of that and moving and packing up to Dubai. And I chose the latter. And I thought, well, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And what's the worst that can happen? I don't enjoy my time in Dubai and I just move back to the UK. Like, I've already got a place. There's nothing to lose, right? So I thought, okay, whatever. I'll give it a go.
I love that. I mean, from a space of abundance, not scarcity. I think that's when people like, I realize about myself as well, when you're like obsessing over a job role or interview, I feel like you mess up more and you get anxious. And I mean, you did it unintentionally. I feel like you did everything possible to not get this job. And they're like, I'll reply after 3 weeks. Who does that?
I
Like,
know.
don't do
I
that.
was very
If you-
surprised.
Yeah, guys, don't do that if you're listening.
Don't ever do
Amazon
that.
today is much more competitive, just as much as it was back then. So I think it's great. I'm sure they loved you. That's why they waited around for you.
Well, I don't really know. Maybe they just didn't have anybody else. I have no idea what was going on, but I would never do that again. Because even as a hiring manager, to not have a response for ages, I don't know.
I mean, it worked out. So
But they didn't tell
worked
you
out.
anything about this, did they?
No, they didn't, which I found really strange. I was expecting like
Well, they were
questions.
just
for them to
busy as
ghost
well.
you at least,
Yeah.
like retaliate.
Or because I responded, I was like, oh, hey, you know, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm ready to schedule that next stage now. And I just remember thinking, who's going to
you?
respond to this?
I love that. No, I love that. It worked out. So all is
It
well.
did,
All
yeah.
is well.
So, and do you like your life in Dubai now?
I love it. I really do love it here. And to be honest, I feel like I left at the right time because I feel like the UK has been on a slippery slope downwards. You know, I look at life with some of my friends and, you know, everything is getting more expensive.
Yeah.
But how much they're making is not necessarily matching that, right? So things are becoming harder. Even though you have more years experience, you should be earning more. But everything else in society is getting harder. And then obviously I'm kind of here and I'm just like living it up. I'm living it up, and I'm really lucky. I've got family here, which I think makes the entire experience very different. I don't know if I would have the same feeling if I didn't have family here, though, because I think it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
You don't have that. I know a lot of friends have that feeling of feeling like, you know, isolated, alone, or even just in an unknown, right? Because there's, you know, Dubai sometimes can be very transactional. People come and go constantly. You make a good, you know, group of friends, and next thing you know, half of them might have decided to go somewhere else. So yeah, I feel like I'm very fortunate, and I do love it here. I'm taking the opportunity to get to know the Middle East a little bit better and expose myself to different cultures. So yeah, I really can't complain.
But what about work-life balance? Because a lot of people who is moving from UK to Dubai, they complain that the workload is much more difficult here. Is it the same for you?
No, actually, which is crazy. I think I've heard that complaint a lot. I don't know, maybe I was just working in some crazy places before, but my work-life balance in the UK was not healthy. I actually think it's healthier here, but it's also through like growth. Like, I've learned to put better boundaries when it comes to work and life, and I've learned to say no and push back on certain things as well. So I think that's been a big change. Also, I think when you're younger in your career, you want to impress, right? You want to go above and beyond, and quite often it gets taking the piss a little bit, and you struggle to figure out. No one tells you should push back and say no. You're seen as like a bad employee. So you get into this like kind of really unhealthy cycle of just giving too much of yourself. And also like London is just mad in general, right? It's very, 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 very fast paced. I think Dubai is also fast paced, but it's a different type of pace. Dubai is more scrambly, you know, like I feel like there's
Making
just
sense of everything.
it's just messy. Yeah, it can be really messy. There's just a lot going on all the time, and sometimes it feels like disorganized, whereas like in London you're like, you know, it's almost like you've just accidentally stepped into like an escalator and you're just being zoomed off. That's what it feels like. You just feel like you're being dragged with the whole thing. But over here it just feels like you're scrambling to put things together constantly. So yeah, I would say like it hasn't I think my work-life balance is hopefully better. But I still do take on a lot more than I probably should.
That's actually interesting because I love this because when you talk to people about, and this has been such a hero topic of like moving from outside to Dubai and what their experience has been. We're talking to someone yesterday and we're like, okay, what's your like prime advice to somebody or like your younger self? And it was like something along the lines of, your work isn't everything, do less, blah, blah. I'm like, but would the 21-year-old you listen to this advice? Like, no, of course not. I'm like, I guess so. Like we would never. And like you said, we can tell people like that work is not everything. Don't like overwork yourself to the point of burnout. But I feel like sometimes you're in spaces where you're validated and appreciated for like the crazy amount of work you're doing. And if that's the only where you're shining, that's the only thing you'll know how to do. And I think with experience, you realize, okay, it's okay to slow down. I mean, we can tell everyone. I've tried to tell this to my team as well. And I've said there needs to be balance, but I'm not going to take away their drive because it's their stage in life where they need to build and grow as well. So yeah, I feel like even if somebody told you to slow down, I don't think you would have.
Absolutely not. No. I would have been like, okay, great, that's good for you. But also, I think I don't know, it depends how hungry you are as well.
Probably.
And I think I was or have been, probably still am, quite ambitious. And I think if there was an opportunity where I could carve myself out and go above and beyond, and that would be recognized, and I could potentially like move up a level or whatever, then I was ready to go for it.
Yeah,
So,
and I think we were also in the stage of like building new scope for ourselves. Although like you entered a space today, there are a lot of roles existing where you can like find your way in. At that time when we were like growing in advertising, I don't think there was many, so you had to like build things on your own from scratch. So yeah.
But I know that you keep taking new opportunities because some time ago you moved to another company, right? Capital.com.
Yes, I did. That was a bit of a weird one as well, to be honest. I think I've been quite lucky with some of my work choices. Yeah, how the whole thing happened was Amazon, we were pitching to Capital.com. You know those boxes where you can kind of, brand the Amazon boxes?
Yeah, it's my favorite story. Let's get into it.
So we were pitching and, we just had this branded box idea come through. And, I was part of the non-endemic side of things. Those are people who aren't necessarily selling products on Amazon. So I thought, you know what, like, let's go pitch. So we were pitching and things were going well. They were really keen, but they also didn't really have like a branding team or like a programmatic. It wasn't even programmatic, to be honest. It was just branding, and then you get programmatic, separately. And I remember the pitch went well, and I remember we had this discussion like after, and they were like, asking about programmatic and a little bit more about it and like what you do in it. And I was like, kind of there as a consultant. That was my job, right? So I was explaining like some of the benefits and how you can kind of utilize it and how they can capitalize it, but also on Amazon, also beyond that, right? And I remember at the time they were just like, well, why don't you just do it? And I thought, what the hell? I was like, I've got a job. I was like, that's really nice, but like, no thanks, I've got a job. And I remember at the time I was like, I went back and I was actually then considering, I was like, would I risk leaving Amazon, the holy grail that is Amazon?
Did you also stop answering them?
No, I didn't. This one I was actually I learned my lesson. I'm not doing that again. That was really bad. Don't ever do that. And I just remember thinking, oh God, like if I left to then go into what is very much an unknown, right? It was like a trading platform, how rogue. Like I just thought, what on earth is going on? And I remember I do have like, professional goals. I've had my 5-year, 10-year goals or whatever. I have this vision in my head of where I think I want to get at, what I'm trying to do. And I had to ask myself, if I stay at Amazon, like, am I getting any closer to these like 5-year goals, or am I just in a really good company that has a lot of global merit? And it was definitely the latter. And I remember just thinking, okay, cool. Like maybe I could actually do this. And if I did this, this is going to be a big, big, big risk. But with big risk sometimes comes big reward or big failure. And I'm not scared of failing per se. Like I don't mind. Like I have faith and confidence in, what I've learned up until now. I was like, okay, cool. Let's say I left Amazon and I started off there. It doesn't work out. I don't think I'm going to be without a job for like a year. You know, I feel like, okay, great. I'll take a bit of a professional break and I'll come back again and, you know, start again. So yeah, I decided to take that jump and to basically migrate over into fintech. And this was something that was really big for me because I kept seeing in the industry, I don't know if you guys have the same thing, where you're having a look at, you know, the levels and levels and levels above you in the industry. And, you know, do you see yourself represented there? You know, do you see opportunities there? I'm not going to say too much, but I did not see myself there. And I also looked internally and I saw, you know, my boss's role and my boss's role. And I thought, do I want to be doing any of that? And the answer was very, very clearly, no, I don't. What I did want, though, was I just wanted to like learn something new. I felt like I was getting really bored. I was getting stagnant. And I thought at the very least, like this change would push me into the deep end where I have to learn something new. I'm exposed to something different. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, then I've learned something and I just carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you took your experience and went into something that you didn't know about. So it was like, I am not totally wasting my experience, but I'm also going into a new space and I'm going to be building something. And I think building something is always exciting. And I totally understand, like, when you get to a level, you have to reflect and look at what my professional next stage looks like. And I feel like with the incredible women I'm surrounded with, I feel like you would make space. You will make it. But the question is, do you want to be doing these things is the real question. So I 100% get you because I come to those questions now and then. I ask myself, I'm like, I don't aspire to become a CEO of a media agency, you know? I mean, I love what I do. I enjoy what I'm doing. But I think like there will be a time I look at them and the work they do with, I'm sure they're doing great work. I don't know entirely, but I'm like, I don't think this is my goal, you know? But as long as I'm building something and going forward, then I think I'll be happy, even if it's in the media agency realm. So I completely get where you're at. So moving into fintech, how did you feel now? I think it's been over a year.
Yes, it's been a year and 4 months, I think, something like that. Well, I survived. That's great. That's step one.
Let me just take one step back. For those who may not know what Capital is, Capital.com is, what is it?
Okay, yeah, of course. So it's a trading platform. And essentially, we specialize in CFD trading, which in the crux of things, I'm going to try and really simplify it down. You're not buying the assets. So for example, let's talk about crypto or let's Bitcoin or gold or, you know, whatever. You're not actually buying gold. You're not buying crypto. You're not buying stocks or shares or anything. You're essentially speculating on which way it's going to go. You know, is the price of gold going to go up? And then you basically place a trade saying that it's going to go up. Or you place a trade saying that's going to go down. So you're speculating on the movement of the market. That's what like CFD trading is. So rather than having and owning that underlying asset, you are essentially buying against the fluctuations. And within that, you can also do this leveraged. So what this means is rather than saying, okay, I think gold's going to go up and I'm going to buy gold at this price, if it goes up 1, I'm going to make 1. You can leverage it, meaning that you can do 10x or 20x or 50x. So if it goes up 1, I make 10. Or if it goes down 1, I lose 10. So it's a much higher risk type of trading or investment. But again, like as we mentioned before, with high risk comes high reward or high failure.
Who is paying in this case? Or it works this way that there are people who decided to put that specific stock goes down. There are another group of people who decided to speculate that the stock will go up. And that's how they exchange the money between them.
Essentially, like that's pretty much how it happens. It's basically just like an exchange of funds. But I think what's quite interesting is it's never 50-50. And like everything always moves. Like people will make money, people will lose money. But you have people who have a little bit more hunger with certain things, will want to really like highly leverage some of their trades. So that's why they tend to go down like CFD trading as opposed to just like buying stocks, shares or owning. Because you're a little bit more limited to, I guess, like how much you could potentially make, but you have less risk as to how much you could potentially lose.
Right. CFD stands for?
Oh God,
It's fine.
I should know that,
guys,
shouldn't I?
Google it. No, it's okay.
Complex.
It's fine. Is it very similar to day trading, would you say?
It's day trading is just a type of trading. Day trading is like you're going to be trading and opening and closing your trades in the same day versus holding things for like a really long time.
But I believe it's for the professional trader, right? So it's not for someone who just decided to start investing.
It's actually for everyone, but it's less around professional trader and someone who started investing, but it's more around risk appetite. Like it's a high risk, you know, I mean, the percentage changes every single month in terms of how many people lose money. Sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 80%. It is very, very high risk. So I think you have to, if you are like, you know, a novice, you know, investor or novice trader, only you, actually, even if you're, you know, professional, like you should only really be putting money towards something that is high risk, that under the, you know, assumption that you could potentially lose everything you're putting
comfortable
in.
losing 100%.
Right. So it's like you have to be very careful with this, which is why, you know, like even when we're onboarding clients onto the platform, our onboarding process is quite rigorous. We ask you a lot about like how much you make, how much you save, you know, like all of these sorts of questions to make sure that you're not going to be playing around or putting in funds that if you lose it, you've got nothing.
You lost the
Yeah,
product.
Exactly, you know, like, so if someone has those sort of tendencies, they won't actually pass the onboarding process.
Because investing can also become like super addictive for a lot of people. I've seen it. And we've seen it with crypto, how people have put in chunks and chunks and like lost it.
Yeah.
I mean, while we're at it, when we're talking about investing, let's segue into money habits. Let's talk about you. When did you get into investing and how did you go about it? Did you start with books, podcasts, or were you always interested in investing?
God, when did I get into investing? I'm trying to think of like the first thing I ever invested. I think the first time I think ever thought about investing was when I started at my first job and you got the opportunity to buy shares in this company, right?
Oh.
If you know, like that's how it starts. Because I
early,
remember
yeah.
just being like, what the hell is this? And I didn't understand it. So of course I didn't dabble. I was like, cool, great, like I don't really know what that means. I think I'm gonna skip, you know, sort of thing. Good decision at the time. So that was kind of like the first things where I'm starting to learn a little bit more about like stocks and shares and what does that mean. And then I think I remember at that company, we were all pretty young and had one of my colleagues he'd was started to like get into podcasts or reading books, really into things. And I remember him talking about Bitcoin. And I just remember thinking, I was just zoned out. I was like, I've got no idea what you're even talking about. Like the concept of like non-physical money just was not clicking in my brain at all. So I zoned out. And then my brother-in-law, he's worked in the financial sector for a while. So he basically introduced me to investing. He was like, you know, talking about Ethereum and he's talking about this and talking about Facebook shares and stocks. And I think just being in that environment in itself, I then started to get a little bit curious, right? Because then I started doing a bit of my own research and being like, okay, well, what is going on with Facebook? Like, what's going on with Amazon? What's going on with this?
When was this?
This must have been maybe around 2015, 2016. Yeah, 2016.
Still a decent time, yeah.
It's been a minute. I wish I was doing stuff.
2015 is still a good time because a lot of people started like maybe last year.
Yeah. But the things, I mean, like, okay, now we're looking back at it. It's like been almost like 9 years since I should have properly started. But again, I didn't know what I was doing. So I remember like, you know, I was in Dubai actually downloading Coinbase. Do you know Coinbase?
But it's not here though.
No, like
you can.
you can download it here. It's like Coin was basically this platform where you could buy cryptos. And at that point in time, I was just like, I don't even really know what this is, but sure, I'm gonna just download it because my brother-in-law's doing it, and I was like, if he's doing it, I want to do it too. So I remember downloading it. It took 8 weeks for me to basically get verified. By that time, like the price of Ethereum had basically come and gone, right? And then already I was looking, I was like, oh God, I was going to buy it at this price and now it's at this price. Is it even worth buying it? Like, I'm not going to bother. And then I remember he was kind of pushing me. He was like, oh, well, just play around with it, right? So I thought, okay. So that was kind of the first time I had to basically look at my money and be like, okay, if I was gonna put this amount in, like, and I, you know, hypothetically lose it, is that okay? Like, how would I feel about it? Of course, don't want, even if you lose, like, you know, like 500 dirhams on the floor, you're like thinking about that 500 dirhams for like months to come, right? So like losing money is actually not like an easy thing to come to terms with. But then I thought, okay, cool. I you know, I'm gonna put a bit of money into it. And I remember buying Ethereum at that time. I don't know, I think it was, I can't even remember how much it was. It was ridiculously cheap compared to what it is now. And I remember buying, it must have been like 20 or something Ethereums. And I had no idea what I was doing. But what I was obsessed with that phone. I was like staring at my phone constantly, watching it just like slowly go up and down and up and down. And every time it went down, I thought, oh my God, I'm losing money. You know, like I just didn't know what I was doing. And then I would sell and then I'd buy and then I'd sell. It was just really like all over the place, really sporadic, had no strategy, didn't know what I was doing. But I just thought, you know what, I'm going to buy something, I'm going to see. Bought a bit of Bitcoin, a bit of Ethereum, bought a bit of like Ripple. God. So I bought like lots of random stuff, right? And over periods of time, I wasn't necessarily then diversifying my portfolio. I was in crypto, which was so risky. It was wild. I was like, don't know what I was doing. But it was then like slowly building. And I was like, oh, there's a bit of money coming in. Great. So then I started closing a little bit and I'll take a little bit more out and take a bit more out. And then it kind of got to the point, I think this must have been probably 2018-ish time, when I thought I was going to buy a property. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I need money, right? So I can't have the luxury of just having this random bits of money in like this. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start taking stuff out. So I took a bunch of stuff out, didn't buy property, that just didn't go through. So I thought, okay, cool. Put a bit more back in. At that point, I've lost, you know, you're just making losing at that point. That's kind of how I started with what I would say like my haphazard investment. And I remember I also started learning how to do some general trading. So that's basically I was buying the underlying asset in that case. And then I started trading on Facebook stocks and some Amazon stocks and some random stuff as well that I didn't even know what it was. I just saw it pop up and I thought, why not? See, you have to start from somewhere.
Sometimes you're just doing random things, right?
Very random. It was very random because I honestly didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is that I was like, oh, I see I could make some money. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to try. So that's kind of how I started, right? I won't say I wasn't reading books. I wasn't reading podcasts. I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't understand any of it. But I just thought, I'm just going to start. And if I lose it, it is what it is. If I don't, it is what it is. Like, let's see what happens.
And you didn't have any hard lessons, I mean, because sometimes people get crazy, they invest like, I don't know, half of their savings, for example. So you didn't do this, you just played safe, you invested small amount just to get used to it, right?
Yeah. So I remember, I think like, I must have put initially maybe like $2,000, right? And I was just like, oh my God. And I remember when that finally went up to like, you know, 4.5 and I thought, great. So what now I'm like a very sturdy investor, but I basically I took out my initial investment and then I tried to disassociate that emotional feeling to whatever else was in there. And I kept saying like, this is kind of play money. It's like, if I say it enough to myself, it will be. And that's kind of how I went about it. Like, of course I was lucky. Like basically was able to take out my initial investment. But apart from that, it was all very much like test and learns. I started CFD trading without even knowing what it was. I was leveraging God knows what, lost God knows what. Like, it was very random, but it was like hard lessons, right? It was lessons that eventually led me to doing the research, learning about the charts, learning about market dynamics, understanding what it means when there is like, you know, earnings report coming out. What's that going to mean for my Facebook stocks or whatever that I just bought? Like, so it's you slowly come into it. Like, obviously, I think now, if I had the knowledge I have now, I would not have been doing what I was doing back then. I would have just left it in there, shut my phone, and just said, okay, is this going to be a long term or short term? How am I going to approach it? Do I take out my initial investment or do I potentially risk the whole thing? Like, what am I doing? So yeah.
I think I'm where Patricia was years ago. I'm there now. Because I was talking to someone yesterday as well about the same thing about investing. And she's like, oh, you have a diverse portfolio. Because I'm like, yeah, I invested like 1,000 dirham in stake and I get 3 dirhams every 3 months. It's crazy. And then I have something, I started with capital.com. I have IBKR, I have bonds, I have like parked in like Mushrik Millionaire and savings account.
You're
So
dabbling.
I'm just like, here and there. And the bonds and stuff, I know it's like, it's safe, like nothing's gonna happen. And the investment fund, the stocks and the crypto, because I did Binance during COVID time as well. And much like you, I was like, oh, it's going up, it's going down. And at some point, I realized I have an obsessive, like addictive nature. So I need to let go. So I just let it go. And then I saw my money triple and then drop back to below my investments. So I would only invest money that was okay losing. But yeah, I'm like, maybe I need to start sooner before I lose more money. But then, yeah, stocks I started like last year and like small amounts.
But the thing is, I don't know about you, but like, how are you meant to know like where to start if you
You're
don't
not,
just start?
exactly. 100%. So, and I also started with Dubai Financial Stock Market where I've signed up for everything. I'm like, okay, now I've signed up because the sign up is it's so annoying.
Yes.
The sign up process is really annoying because you have to go, it's just submitting. For me, it was harder because I don't have anything under my name. Like the tenancy, all of that. It's like because I live with my
Yeah.
family and we grew up here. And the only thing I have is a bank account. So like I got rejected by capital.com like 5 times. And they're like, give me something that you own. Like I'm like, okay, I'll give you. And then I finally got accepted. And then I realized it's not the kind of trading that I think I'm eligible for.
Yeah.
And I took my money out. Because I'm like, wait, I need to learn for this,
Yeah.
before I get into it. Very cool. So you spoke about your, I feel like having investment conversations at home makes such a huge difference. Having your brother-in-law talk about it, and clearly it made a huge difference in you, like starting that process and now getting to where you are at now. But growing up, were there any certain money habits handed to you? Because I know we spoke about this earlier. Growing up, forget investing in general in stocks and stuff. That's for me, it was never talked about. Like I don't know about you guys, but the one thing that I've seen our moms do is hold gold and and like save cash in the cupboard, or like I don't know. I used to hear our grandmothers put it under the mattress and
Yeah.
things like that. So. Is that something that you also grew up with, where gold was considered the ultimate form of security?
That's actually so funny about the under the mattress. I
Yeah.
feel like this is like cross culture thing. It's like, why does everyone think the best place to put anything, birth certificates, a bit of money, a bit
Yeah.
of gold, is under the mattress?
Can't wait to see the bed bugs there.
Yes. So I think I probably came from a bit of a slightly different background to most people. Like, to answer your question, gold, yes. It's always kind of been safe, right? My mum, if you meet her, loves gold. And so for her, she's like, well, and also she loves jewelry, she loves everything. So
Is your mom Nigerian?
Yeah.
Oh, Nigerian moms are like
Yeah,
Pakistani moms.
exactly.
Like they're the same. One of my really closest friends is Nigerian, and I used to send like clothes from Pakistan to her because she loves those like
Yeah.
embroidered clothes, and they're the same. They talk the same. They have the same rules.
So you get it.
I
so
do, I
she's
do.
like, she's like, well, I'm going to be buying a ring, but it's an investment. And I'm going to be buying this, but it's an investment. It's an investment. It's going to grow. It's going to give back. So from that perspective, like, yes, she did. But both of my parents are business people, entrepreneurs, and have, owned their own businesses where, unfortunately, you do have to have high risk. Like, if you're going to be saying, this is what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be owning my business, I'm going to be doing everything from scratch, you tend to put everything in it. So I feel like from an investment perspective, I've grown up with a much higher risk appetite than maybe most other people, which is strange because it's definitely not the same across like the rest of my family. And I know like with my dad's British, like, but he's, my dad's, almost 80 now. Like he's like, old school, property is where it's at. Get property, buy property. You've got money, get property. So that was like, the drum that he's been banging for years. And that's what he was doing. He was buying properties, wherever, and then
I
whenever.
love your family. So on one side, he's buying the property and your mom is
Yeah.
buying the gold, and it's like
Yeah. My mom's spending the money.
Actually, property and gold
No,
is
she's investing.
she's
She's
investing. Property and gold is in a lot of cultures considered a sign of wealth. If you have a property and if you have gold, is that the same in Russia?
I don't know. We didn't have money back then, when Soviet Union broke. So most of the people didn't have any savings to invest to anywhere. So we didn't have this
is
kind of
another
conversation.
I feel like this conversation never even happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is another episode. We need to talk about this.
Yeah, so it's like, so my dad was like all about property, and I remember he would like, buy property, and then when he needed the money for whatever business, you sell the property. Like the whole thing was just seemed like a lot, but it was all based on tangible assets. Like that's what everybody was looking at, and obviously, my family grew up. Well, my family live in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. It's a very different economy than like a stabilized country. So usually, you don't really have people like saving money in their bank accounts. Like that just doesn't really happen. And also, you're working with like an economy where the currency is just shit. So keeping your money in your bank account sometimes is like the worst thing, which is why people, would put it under the mattress, or let's say buy gold, where even though your currency goes down, at least the price of what you're holding remains the same. So I kind of came up with like that's kind of the background that my family have.
It makes sense because, as you were saying, I realized that most of these cultures come from a sort of a shaky economy and like certain unrest politically as well. So people had a lot of distrust towards like financial institutions in generally, and they didn't want to put anything in those banks. And I think that's where the whole thing came from. So in a rainy day, come under my bed. I'll give you some dollars.
And I don't know about you guys, but like, oh my God, like everyone was just like, oh, don't trust the banks. Don't trust the banks.
It still exists in some of the Arab countries as well. I had heard like a lot of people even in Iraq feel that way. Even Pakistan as well, I think is still there, but people are starting to trust it a bit more because they're coming out with saving schemes, things like that, where you can secure your money somehow, like you don't lose your money if something goes down. But yeah, I guess you're right. I think that's where it comes from, probably.
It comes from that, and I don't know, like even my mom is like obsessed with buying land. So like in Nigeria, there's just lots of land. So
it's always a thing.
But it's that physical, and I remember even sometimes when I go back home, she'll like take me on a little drive around to look at the land or check the land that she's bought or have. So it's all about having that like physical thing that you can go to and see and touch, which I think is obviously how we're investing now. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah, it is. So it's interesting you said that. So I feel like from what I've gathered so far, there was never really any shame around talking about money when growing up. But in some societies, and I have seen that, where money discussions is either seen as a taboo or something you shouldn't be talking about, where you can't ask about your savings or how do you save, or what your salary is, what your mortgage is. Like not outright, but like nobody educates the other person about it. I don't know how you feel about that, but I recently, and I'm going to read it out because I was reading a book because coming into one of the industries where I had no clue, I had nobody who was in the industry, I had no idea what I should be earning. So I had to ask these uncomfortable conversations. I could see people become visibly uncomfortable. And it was never like, what's your salary? It's like, what should I earn? Just like guide me, just guide me. It was really, really hard. So I read this part from the book where she said, it's called Girls That Invest. It's like, it breaks down investing in layman terms, like really, really easy way. She says, silence about money only benefits those already in power. Because I know for me, trying to normalize these conversations has often felt like pushing against some like general rule. But the moment I started asking, something shifted and I started getting more beyond what was handed to me, So what do you feel about that? Is that something that you grew up around as well, where it's like, do not ask what you should be earning. Let them give you what you're getting.
So there's a very special place in my heart for this question, actually, because when I became a hiring manager, I would say maybe like, I don't know. I would say when I became like mid-level hiring manager, and I would see the way, women approach conversations around promotions and how much they should be earning and versus how men do, or even, just even coming into the industry, for me, it was like a bit alarming. You, even for example, let's say you have a role that you're hiring for, and not to generalize or stereotype, but this is my experience. I would get, a handful of CVs from, women who basically could do 90% of what the role already entails. But I would get like a plethora of CVs from men who could barely do 50%. And that was already the start, right? And imagine at that point, the starting salary is already, it's there. You should know what the starting salary is when you're applying for a role. So you could already tell that, history of worth, like what am I worth? And even in interviews, you would have that even more, where there is sometimes women come with this feeling of apology, being like, oh, there was this in the job spec, or, being really worried to highlight that maybe they don't have experience in that one thing, versus what I saw happening with men, where it's just a bit they really focus on the things, the strengths and whatever, and how there's much scope to learn. So already I'm glad that you were asking those questions about, what are you earning? What am I worth? What should I be worth? But one thing I did realize is I feel like there is this, this under level of feeling, well, if you earn the same as me, then, what's going to happen? Or am I worth more? It's oh my God, that is not you can't boil everything down to your numerical worth, right? So I still do think there is this, there's this unspoken thing that you're just not meant to speak about money.
Right.
But actually, I feel like we need to strip that back, because we really should be a little bit more transparent with what we have, and especially if you're leaning on your peers or your friends or your family to support and guide you on what you should be doing with some of these funds. It's they need to know what you're working with to a certain degree. And also, I think it's maybe sometimes good to kind of normalize some of these sort of conversations, because we're essentially protecting, institutions that have crazy pay disparities that shouldn't even be there, purely because they want to pay you on what you think you're worth, as opposed to what you're actually worth.
100%.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
I feel like you're so right, because I not just feel like, I know it. It's these generational things that we need to break and we need to unlearn, because it also, I don't know what the right word is, it kind of promotes a lot of insecurity as well in financial standing, because you don't realize that when you're holding back, and you don't have to share your finance, you don't have to share your bank account number, that's private information, right? You don't have to share how much you save, but it's okay to educate your community. It's okay to tell your people, hey, you know what, these are the brackets for this role, or this is how I'm investing. Why don't you do it as well? If you really want to be part of communities, if you really want to have people who support you, you need to give back as well. So whatever you've learned, you have to be open about it, because I think now people are getting there, because there are a lot of communities and a lot of people get friends now discussing these conversations and sharing, oh, I'm buying this stock, I'm buying that. But I think before, from what I experienced, it was very I remember explicitly asking somebody, what do you think a manager roles? Hey, can you tell me what the potential bracket is? And I got, sorry, I'm not comfortable sharing that. Bruh, it's not your father's company.
Yeah, 100%.
Who cares? You should look out for me. I'm your friend. But I think she also came from a mindset of, oh, you shouldn't. You'll get evil eye, or what you said about not just trouble. It's more of I don't want her to feel like she's earning less, or and I've been very outright about, oh, I earned this. My friends get they look at me, why? I'm just you should know.
I think actually I agree with you. Because you do not need to tell people how exactly you earn. You can just give the bracket, so other people can understand what they can earn if they want to apply for the specific job or role. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And I think there is we can all earn good. It's just because I earn well does not mean you can, or your money's been taken away from mine. And also, as you mentioned around that community of with friends, right? So I've got this WhatsApp group with my friends, and it's growing, and I love it. And we're all sharing whatever we're doing. So it's I'm buying this, I'm trading this, or keep an eye on this stock, or this is in my watch list, right? Because it's empowerment needs to happen, and it has to happen unselfishly. And also I think, as a general, like people need to do a bit of work. If you feel like you don't want to share your investment knowledge or share something with someone else, why?
Why?
Why
Wow.
is that? That's giving me weird vibes.
100%.
It's giving me
it's
weird
giving,
vibes.
you cannot be in my circle. Like,
Exactly.
because what's the point? Where are you going to take all of this money? Are you going to be alone? Like, what?
What is going on?
I think the joy really comes from sharing and watching everyone succeed together. And by the way, this is a habit you need to learn. You need to unlearn gatekeeping.
100%.
Because you're not bad. You just need to unlearn it, and that's why you're always anxious and you're always feeling like, oh, like I cannot share this with this person. I bought this and I can. No, it's okay. Relax.
Yeah.
Everyone can earn good money and they can live a happy life. And maybe your threshold is different from someone else's. It doesn't have to be the same.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
education has to be shared. What do you wish more women were told early on about building financial independence?
Okay, what I wish more women were told more often or encouraged more is not just pure down the route. I don't know about you guys, but like in my culture, it's like, okay, you know, you've gone to university, you've got a job now, great. Okay, now when are you gonna get married? Okay, when are you gonna have kids? You know, when's it gonna happen? Like no one's like helping you plot for stability by yourself, right? Or like that independence. And I think when it comes to financial investing, obviously men and women generally are different with how they approach investing. What I would love to see is more communities of women supporting each other. You know, as I see within my community of friends, that sharing of knowledge, you know, boosting each other, bringing people in. If I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm investing in this and I can see it's doing really well, like I'm going to evangelize it to my friends as well, and just also share that, like share the learnings, like rather than you having to start from scratch with your learnings. You know, why do you need to do that? And I think it's like what tends to happen is a lot of these investment spaces are so male focused and just filled with men. It almost feels like a space that you don't fit into and you don't know how to integrate within. And I just want like women to know that there is a lot of female investors. There is a lot of female investors who are willing to kind of like open up and share what they're doing. So don't feel like this space isn't for you. It's absolutely for everyone. And obviously I know that you had like another question around like the behaviors of men and women when it comes to investing. It's just the behaviors in general. Oh my God. So like majority of our clients are men. Of course, because it is a high risk, high reward, and you know, men think they can do it all. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. But you see, like, you know, the women's attitude towards investing is they almost, as what I said with like the job thing, they almost feel like they want proficiency before they can start. And they want to do that work of like, you know, mitigating any loss, mitigating everything else, and like being really confident before they even start stuff. Whereas what happens with men is they just start and then they learn and then they grow. But I think sometimes maybe, you know, as women, we do have to push outside of these gender boundaries that we have. We should be more comfortable in the uncomfortable. I started without knowing what I'm doing. You're starting without knowing what you're doing, but you're going to learn. Like every single decision that you make, you will learn from, and it will then iterate what you do in the future. So it's like, you know, there is this very different gender norms. We don't need to do everything high risk. There's all sorts of stuff that you can be doing. You don't need to do like CFD trading that's crazy leverage, or you can, and instead of 20 to 1, you do 5 to 1. Like you can find an investment portfolio that kind of fits your needs and fits your fancy, and slowly grow in that. But what it's quite funny is like we've actually seen, in terms of I guess overall success, we do see a lot of female investors become very successful because they take that time to learn and iterate and learn it, iterate and learn it and iterate, and not necessarily just allow for ego and emotions to overtake everything and make some crazy decisions, even though at the back of your mind you knew that, oh, I should not have placed that trade. But I'm in now, you know, or I was telling my mate that I'm going to be buying XYZ and like now I feel like I have to do it, you know?
I love this advice, and I think it goes for both both men and women, and I think anyone starting in the field. And I agree with you. I think the summary is community, support your community, share these things with each other, grow together. Some of us have pacts with our friends where if one of us gets rich, the other one is getting sponsored. That's what's happening. And what you said, just get started. I think like a man, I suppose, because I just got into it. But we love that. Thank you so much. This sounded everything was amazing. I'm actually really inspired. I think I'm gonna make a list of things I'll be doing to now educate myself more in my investments.
Maybe I'll send you a watch list of things to keep an eye out
Yeah,
for.
if you can, I would love
Not
that.
investment advice, but
No,
do
we
with
do
it what you
that with
will.
friends as well. We're like, I'm doing this, up to you.
Exactly.
Like, do it. But yeah, no, thank you so much for coming and having this wonderful conversations. We loved having this chat with you and having you here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
That